Gail, thank you very much. You are watching Sky News. Good to have you back. Newly released figures suggest that divorce rates for newly married couples have fallen dramatically since they peaked back in the 1990s. We'll have to talk more about that, and to find out why, let's speak now to Graham Coy. He is a divorce lawyer and partner at Stowe Family Law. Graham, great to have you on the programme this hour. So what's behind the change in trend, do you think?
Well, it's a very interesting trend because hitherto, we'd always assumed that something like 42% of marriages in this country would break down and end in divorce. And half of those couples who were married for 10 years or less would account for that half of that 42%. So, in other words, the first 10 years of marriage was going to be, we thought, the most difficult. What this research is showing is that, in fact, the trend that we'd all witnessed for some years is beginning to reverse. What the reasons for that are difficult to say. I think there are a couple of things that occurred to me since I read the research this morning. The first is perhaps, and probably the most significant, is that there's a trend of changing roles in families, so that, if you like, what were hitherto assumed to be really vital things in people's lives, such as success in a career, financial success and so on, are perhaps, at least for those people in their first 10 years or so of marriage, becoming less important. And what's becoming more important in turn is actually the family. So, for example, fathers playing a much greater role in childcare. So that's one reason. Another reason is perhaps that it is now generally accepted that people will live together quite often for some while before they marry. So it may well be that that period of cohabitation shows couples whether they are going to be able to successfully live together for a long time and make marriage a success, or whether they realise that, in fact, they're not that compatible and they go their own ways before they marry. But they're interesting social trends which we need to look into. And I think the government needs to look into this very carefully. I don't think, on the other hand, it should make any difference to the consultation the government has announced, which is to look at whether we ought to have a regime of no-fault divorce in this country. I don't think this research, which is interesting, should affect the big lobby of support that there is for no-fault divorce. The two things are completely separate. Of
course, being announced by the Justice Secretary not that long ago. I mean, just going back to these numbers, Graham, do you think that the younger generation, people who are coming through and getting married now, have more realistic expectations of what to expect, and maybe happier to work harder at their relationships?
I think that may be, and I think it may be a consequence of the recession. Because the recession taught us one thing, which is you can't always expect to be on a gradual upward graph of financial success in life. And perhaps it's taught all of us, and especially those who are beginning to embark on marriage now, that there are more important things in life than just money.
Is it good news for you if fewer people are getting divorced?
Sorry?
What does it mean for you if fewer people are getting divorced?
In fact, I mean, the number of people getting divorced is around about 100,000 each year. So about 200,000 people getting divorced each year. So the number of people actually that we see on a daily basis in our offices isn't changing that much. What is changing a lot is that we're seeing a lot of people who aren't marrying at all, are living together for their own reasons, not getting married, not wanting to get married. And what then we're seeing is a major problem in trying to protect those people financially and otherwise, especially if they're children, when their relationships break down. And one thing the government are not looking at the moment is what protection should be given, if any, to couples who choose not to marry but live together when that relationship comes to an end. Because at the moment, the weaker financial party, not always, but more often than not the woman, has very little protection legally at all.
Are you married, Mr. Coy?
I'm married, yes.
And happily so? We hope so, at least.
I'm happily married. I think you might need to ask my wife, but I'm happily married.
Any tips for how you keep a loving and long-lasting marriage going?
I think you need to realise that it's got to be a relationship where you put a lot of effort into it, and there are going to be highs and lows, and you've got to get over the lows.
Well said. Best piece of advice we've heard all day here on Sky News. Thanks so much for joining us.
Okay.
Graham Coy there, divorce lawyer and partner at Stowe Family Law.